I was like, Lord, if you knew this is what my life would be, why didn't you just take me while I was in the hospital? Prior to 7 years, I dealt with infidelity in my marriage on his part. So trying to get over that and live is hard enough. But I did it because I thought at the time that's what I heard the Lord say. And I understood that you go through things in marriage. Every marriage is not perfect, especially when Christ is involved. You have the enemy on one hand, you have God on the other hand, and he's trying to work something in you and work something out of you, and you're trying to grow together and mesh two people together as one, all the things. And so we had that going on. And then we get to about the 7th year. So I'm always very leery about women who want to be his friend and, all these kind of things. And so it was this one girl who was just always at our house. And I'm thinking she wants to be my friend, but I think she really wanted to be his. And we're about, this is later on, maybe about the 8th year of us, the 8th year of our marriage. So like the next year, I ended up having a stroke. And so I remember getting up to go to the bathroom. It was a Tuesday morning. I go to the bathroom. I'm coming back to bed, and to get my computer to finish my homework because I was in school. And I remember my arm hurting, or it felt funny. My arm and my leg felt funny. So if you know anything about a stroke, because I had one before, you have to do the test and I'll let you know something's wrong. So you lift your hands out in front of you. And if they're out in front, straight, you're fine. But the right arm was down some. And I'm like, oh my God, not again. And so I went around I started kind of getting dressed, and I went around on the other side and I said, hey, Adam, we gotta get up. I think I'm having a stroke. And he said, okay, well, can you take yourself? And I was like, what? And so I'm looking at him not laying back down, and I'm like, I shook him again. I said, did you hear me? I'm having a stroke. And he said, oh my God. So he jumped up, he prayed, and then we started getting dressed. And so we get dressed, we're leaving out the room, and I go down because I have a daughter and she's 4. So I go to her room real quick and I look at her, and I'm just kind of sitting there. And so finally he comes down to the room. He says, hey, we got to go. So we go down, we go to the hospital, and it definitely was a stroke. And as I was sitting in the hospital room, because they put all this stuff on you, to check what's going on, because if the stroke hasn't went far, they can give you something that'll reverse it. But we didn't get there in time, so they couldn't give me things to reverse it. And so I remember sitting there, and I said to the Lord, I said, now I know all the scriptures. I know that this is something that you can handle. Nothing's too hard for you. Nothing is impossible. So I just want to know if you're going to heal me. And so in my innermost being, I felt the Lord saying yes. And so because I'm very specific, I had to ask him specifically, okay, is it going to be when I go to heaven? Because I know that's when you heal people. Or is it going to be on earth? I want to know if I'm going to live a life like whatever this is, or am I going to live a life like I had? And so I felt the same people call unctioning, or the feeling. And I felt him telling me, yes, I'm going to heal you before you die. This is not to the death of you. And so I just sat there and I said, okay, then we can do this. And so I'm in the hospital, and they have me hooked up to this IV, and I got to go to the bathroom. So I go to the bathroom, and as I turn around to leave out, I felt my strength like leaving me. And so I thought, well, I'm really tired, but it wasn't my strength. It was my mobility. And so I'm falling, and I'm like, oh my God. So I'm like, what do I do? And so I fell close to the door. So I'm like, how am I going to get out of here? So I managed to get the door open with my left hand, and I got the attention of a nurse, and she came and got me. She was like, oh my God. So I had lost all mobility on my right side. I could not move my arm. I could not move my leg. And so we get back to the room. They talked to me about what I have to do. And so I went through about 8 weeks. Yeah, 8 weeks in the hospital, of physical therapy, which is from the waist down, and occupational therapy, which is from the waist up. And so when he came, now mind you, he's already gone because my daughter is at home and we have a couple from church that lives with us. So he has to tell them, hey, this happened to Tasha. I got to go back to the hospital and all this. So she goes to the daycare with the other couple's younger kids. And so he comes back and now he finds out like I have no movement on this side. And so, we're sitting there and I said, okay, you have to call my mom and my sister. Actually, yeah, my mom was still living. You have to call my sibling, my mom and stuff, and don't tell everybody yet. Just let me kind of get my head wrapped around this. And so he was like, okay. And at first he seemed like he was dealing with it okay. But as time went on, like he wasn't at the hospital that much. When he came to the hospital, we were just real, what would I call it? Real distant. And I could feel it, but I couldn't really put words to it because he would seem okay and they would not seem okay. And so I'm trying to feel him out, how he's doing, but then I'm trying to wrap my head around it. But I had already got a word from the Lord. I'm going to be healed. So I just believed him. Now, of course, we're in year 12 and I'm like, okay, I can walk, but I had to learn how to walk. And while I was in the hospital, that I think to this day, that's probably the hardest thing I've ever had to do was learn how to re-walk, because when I first began to walk before I was 1, I don't remember. So all my life I've been walking. So I went from walking to not walking, and I'm like, how do you do this? And it was the hardest thing. And I remember talking to my doctors and they said, well, what is a goal that you have? We always ask you a goal because while you're trying to walk, you are going to pay attention to that goal. And I said, my daughter's going to kindergarten. I want to walk her to school. And they were like, well, how far is that? And I told them it's 6 blocks. And they were like, I don't know about that. I said, well, here's what we'll do. You tell me what to do, and I'll do everything that you say do, because this is your specialty. But also God is going to help us. And so they were just like, okay. And so I learned how to walk. So I did walk out of the hospital. At the time I had a cane, and they had to wrap my foot because when you have a stroke, my ankle doesn't flex. And so the same thing with my arm. Well, I did learn to raise my arm a little bit while I was in the hospital, but I couldn't use my fingers and my hands, and my wrists obviously didn't flex. And so I went through all that, and he would come to the hospital, but he wouldn't be there that long. I remember our anniversary, I was in the hospital. And so I thought he was going to come spend the whole day with me, but he didn't. He didn't get there until in the evening for a few hours. And so I was very disappointed, but I kept playing my worship music. And as long as he brought my little girl to see me, and people from church came, and I knew my mom was coming to see me when I got out of the hospital, I was okay. And in those moments, I would bring the Lord into those places where I was disappointed and where I thought he would be there encouraging me, because I had heard stories of marriages that went through so much, people having cancer and their spouse was with them. And I thought that would be my story, and it wasn't. And so I finally got out. I was in there 8 weeks. I get home and I knew things weren't the same. We were more distant. He was mean. And so I just concentrated on my daughter, because now she's 4 years old. So I can't really help adults. They're going to have to help themselves. I had to help my kid. And so, I had a friend who she was just the best person. And She didn't live far from us, and she was really close to my daughter. And so she used to come over every day to make sure she was okay. Because for me, I had this little girl that I had been waiting to have, that I had her at 40. And so I was just like, oh my God, somebody has to make sure they watch over her. So she was there every day, and she would make sure she gets to daycare, and she would come and spend time at the hospital with me. And then she'd go home after I got out of daycare, and she would just always make sure she was watching her for me. And I remember her telling me when I got out, she says her favorite place to go was Target. She just always wanted to go to Target. And so she came and she got me and my daughter Kai, and we were on our way to Target. And she said, listen, I have to tell you something because I love you so much. And I said, okay. She says, I think he's been fooling around. I said, I think you're right. And so she said, and we don't have to talk about it unless you want to. And I said, okay. So we went to Target, and, time was going on, and I just felt like this, I would pray and just try to, people always say when your life change, you have to adjust to a new normal. But I really felt lost. I didn't know what to say, because when people, grown people, you can't, like a kid, you could tell them what to do, what not to do. Grown people, you can't do that to. And so because he wasn't talking to me that much, he wasn't really helpful. He would be out all day, or he would go out at night, and he's practicing music, and he wouldn't be back until in the morning. And it was just really frustrating. Like he would come in at 6 when it's time to get the kids up for school, because we were also watching a friend of ours, their son. So, and I would ask him, hey, where you been? And he'll act like he didn't hear me asking him. And it was just so exhausting. And when you've been through something like I had been through at the time, it was too much. And so I remember going, he had taken Kai to school, and I remember going up the stairs, and I went into my room, and I was just yelling. I was like, Lord, if you knew this is what my life would be, why didn't you just take me while I was in the hospital? And so again, what I feel I've heard like an impression was that I can't take you because she needs you. And I just burst out in tears because I knew he was talking about my daughter, and I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. And it was so interesting. Like it was kind of like a movie. I remember standing at the door, against the door, and I just slid down because I was like, oh. Because at the time I couldn't say I wanted to live, but the Lord always knows what you need to hear. He knows what will give you that next breath to take that next step. And he knew it was my daughter. A good parent would not leave their kid. And so I was like, oh my God. And so I remember sitting there crying for a while. And when I stopped crying and dried my tears and managed to get by my bed to roll over in order to get up, because they teach you how to get up if you're on the floor. I sat on the bed and I said, okay, God, I don't know how I'm gonna do this, but every day that you let me get up and put my feet on the floor, I'll just follow where you lead me. And so 12 years later, after I left him and had to live with roommates and go through divorce and go through custody and the loss of my mother and the loss of her cousin 24 hours later, and 1 month after that, the loss of another close cousin, like we're still standing, my sister and my daughter's 16 and I'm 57. And it's, as I'm still waiting on complete manifested healing, because that's still going to happen. I don't just concentrate on that, because then I'll miss everything that he's done in between that, And I think the thing that I miss the most, and people are like, really, that's the thing you miss the most? And I'm like, yeah, the thing I miss the most is doing my daughter's hair. Because when she was little, and I think I told her this the other day, I said, when you were little, and you probably won't remember, but when I used to have this one job through Manpower. I worked at Qualcomm, and I did the reimbursements for the people who come and interview with Qualcomm, and that's a pretty big company. And so it was a temporary job. I worked about 60 hours a week because I was the only one that did, I did the reimbursements for them. And so I was the only one doing that job. And when every other, because she's really, really long, thick hair. And so I would come home, give her a bath, and I would do her hair every other day. And we would sit and we would talk. And so that was like my favorite time with her when she was little. And it was before the stroke. So we just had this little rhythm we did. And I couldn't, and then she was at the age where we would play games on the floor or play dolls and, things like that. And so after the stroke, I can still play with the dolls. I can still get on the floor and get back up a little slower than I used to. But her hair is something I can't do. And that was our little us time. So I really, really, really missed that. And I told her, I said, well, the first thing I'm going to do is your hair with my hand. I always say that when I can do my wrist, look out because I'm going to do your hair. So she started laughing. But that's what I miss the most.
What do you think your daughter thinks of you?
Well, we've talked. I've asked her. And so she says that she thinks I'm the best mom because I have the intentions to get up every day and make it happen for her. And that makes her feel very important. I said, you are. That is my intention every day. I ask God, how do I raise you? Because I didn't know what to do. Like especially after my mom died, I was like, oh my God, how am I going to do this? Because I think when my mom passed, she was about 6. So between 4 and 6, all kinds of stuff happened. But she thinks I'm a great mom. She thinks I'm a great role model. She knows I make mistakes, but she loves to hear the stories. I was right-handed, so I had to learn how to write with my left hand, cook with my left hand, clean, drive, fold clothes, which I hate, iron, which is another thing I don't like to do. But sometimes I think she's amazed, because I did ask her this. I said, are you ever embarrassed? She's like, of what? And I'm like, because I can't do all the things other moms can do, like physically. And she said, no, because I haven't seen anything that you can't do or that you can't find somebody to do.
Do you think she looks at you as her hero?
Yeah, I think she does.
How does that make you feel?
A job well done, like I'm doing a good job. Because there's a lot of things especially as someone her age, because, I'm not Beyonce or I'm not, I'm not some of these singers out here or these dancers or, but what I do well. So I think what I haven't mastered, I keep trying, because I fully believe, my favorite scripture in the Bible is all things work together for the good of them that love the Lord and are called according to his purpose. And because I love him and I'm called for purpose, I may not know where he's taking me, because I probably wouldn't have chose this route. Just Tasha, this is not the route I would have chose. But since he did, and this is his world and everyone and everything in it, I just go with the flow. Frustrated, crying, kicking and screaming, but I'm going to go. I think that everything works out. So even when I was in the hospital, I remember one of my girlfriends, she called, she says, hey, what do you need? She said, you want something to eat? I said, no, you know what I want? I want some crayons, I want some pencils, some paper, and coloring books. And she was like, do you want me to just take that to your house and give it to Kai? And I said, no, it's for me. She says, why do you need that? And I said, I need to learn how to write with my left hand and color. And she said, okay, but why? I said, so I could teach Kai how to write and I can color with her. And she said, I'll be right down. And so she brought it. And so while I was in the hospital, I taught myself how to write. I don't know how people do without God. I don't know how they managed to get through their problems. I don't even remember how I did without him. I think he was always there. He just waited for me to say, hey, I need you. You know, for him to say, okay, I'm here. Now we can do something different. You know, it's different now, but it's great. Even if everything that I'm expecting is not done yet, but we're still on the journey because I got up today.